But, like, it is another situation than pretending like Caitlin Clark doesn't exist.
They want to make the trajectory look like it's going up and not down. It's whatever, man. We see what's going on.
They're trying to make it so that the data looks as favorable as possible.
ESPN didn't want to show the ratings were down from WNBA All-Star Game because Caitlin Clark didn't play, so they just used the 2023 numbers instead.
ESPN lying.
What if I told you that one of the biggest sports networks in the world just got caught red-handed changing data to hide the most embarrassing truth about women's basketball? What if I told you that ESPN, which calls itself the worldwide leader in sports, lied to millions of people about the ratings for the WNBA All-Star Game by changing numbers, picking and choosing statistics, and lying? And what if I told you that their deception was so obvious, so blatant, that their own journalists started calling them out on social media? This isn't simply about statistics on a screen. This is about a cover-up so big that it shows the truth that makes people uncomfortable. ESPN really doesn't want you to know. Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA is shedding viewers faster than a punctured basketball loses air. The truth they are hiding is so bad.
You guys heard me correctly. The numbers are in. And just like I told you, there was a boycott.
You got to understand, these numbers, they did like 2 million viewers. That's up from 2023. 2023 was a little over 900,000. So it is up. So the numbers are going up. But compared to last year, it fell by 40%.
Oh, so they going to try to spin it. Okay, it could be the second most watched of all time. Of course, it's going to be that, but compared to last year, you still down 30.
That it hurts. The 2025 WNBA All-Star Game didn't just go poorly, it crashed and burned, with a shocking 36% drop in viewership that shook the whole sports media world. We're talking about a drop from 3.44 million viewers in 2024 to just 2.2 million in 2025. But here's where it gets crazy. Instead of telling the truth about these stats, ESPN chose to conduct the most blatant shell game in the history.
They're just skewing data.
So it's up 158% compared to 23. What happened to 24? Y'all just gonna skip over 24? Like, what?
Thing is, you know, this could be disingenuous too. That's the bad side of it, because for some reason they have a thing where they want to compare everything without Caitlin. They're like, oh, well, you know, she's an anomaly, so we could compare these numbers to 2023 and show you that without Caitlin, it's growing.
This is very similar to the WNBA draft, comparing it to 2023. Very similar to how they are presenting this graph.
Of sports journalism. They entirely ignored the 2024 benchmark and instead compared the 2025 data to the 2023 numbers, creating the false impression that there had been increase when there hadn't been. Think about how desperate that action is. Imagine if your favorite team lost their title game, but the sports media only compared their performance to how they played 3 seasons before when they were bad, simply to make them look good. That's exactly what ESPN did, and they assumed nobody would notice. But the basketball world is wiser than they gave us credit for, and the blowback has been extremely nasty. If you believe Caitlin Clark is the WNBA's sole true needle mover, drop needle mover in the comments right now, because what I'm going to show you will prove that point beyond any shadow of a doubt. Here's what truly happened when you look at the real numbers without ESPN.
For all the people that thought that it wasn't a boycott against this All-Star game, it was, bro. People was just DMing me, telling me that they weren't going to look at it. People was telling me that they refunded their tickets. I was even supposed to be there, and I decided not to go because of the things with the referees and the WNBA disrespecting Caitlin.
1,250,000 viewers, woof, out of existence. No Caitlin Clark, not tuning.
Statistical gimmicks. The 2025 All-Star Game brought in roughly 2 million spectators, compared to around 900,000 in 2023. On the surface, that looks like growth, right? Wrong. When you factor in the 2024 figures that ESPN purposely left out, you realize we're looking at a disastrous 40% reduction year over year. But ESPN buried that embarrassing reality deeper than a time capsule, hoping nobody would dig it up. And here's what makes this lie even more absurd. This All-Star Game was placed in Indianapolis, Caitlin Clark's home venue. This should have been the perfect storm for enormous ratings. Home crowd advantage, local hero appeal, maximum media attention.
So all of you guys can sit there and say, oh, you guys are just trying to uplift one player. Oh, the league is more than one. I agree, the league is more than one player. It's more than one good basketball player. But is there more than one player that moves the tide? No. We just have to be honest. It's okay.
Everything was set for success. Instead, it became a ratings fiasco so terrible that ESPN had to stoop to statistical trickery just to save face. The network had the nerve to post a 158% rise statistic everywhere, comparing 2025 to 2023, while entirely ignoring that they had spent the whole season hailing Caitlin Clark for record-breaking viewership numbers. It's the same technique they employed throughout the WNBA draft coverage, always turning back to pre-Clark figures to build misleading narratives of development. But let's talk about the moment that started this entire domino effect of economic collapse. July 15th. Put that date on your calendar, because it's when everything changed. Caitlin
Clark might appear.
There is fans that are just Caitlin Clark fans. I said this yesterday. If Caitlin Clark was to lead to go to New York or any other damn team, expect significant impact in the Indiana Fever viewership, bro. People might tune in for that first season without Caitlin if she was to leave, but after that, it is over with.
There was plenty of people I saw online who said, yo, Caitlin Clark not playing. Oh, she's hurt and they don't want to call fouls. Okay, I'm not giving them a view. I'm not gonna watch. There was plenty of people that boycotted watching this WNBA All-Star.
Clark suffered a groin injury during the Indiana Fever's game against Connecticut, and the market reaction was swift and merciless. Within hours, ticket prices for WNBA games dropped by 48%, plunging from $121 to $64. The message from fans was crystal clear. Without Caitlin Clark, we're not interested. This wasn't just a minor market correction. This was a full-scale economic earthquake that exposed the WNBA's total dependence on one player. Think about how unprecedented that is. In a league that's supposed to be
You can see, when Caitlin doesn't play, it halves. And how are we meant to know that if Caitlin ends up missing a year, Caitlin's gone, that all those fans don't just leave again?
They know they need Caitlin Clark to grow this league.
founded on parity and several superstars. One player's injury prompted ticket prices to virtually slash in half overnight. Clark, who had never sat out a game in college, suddenly found herself missing 10 games in her first season, and each absence felt like seeing the league's life support machine get unplugged. The All-Star Game viewership of 1.25 million viewers tells the real story. Without Clark, the WNBA wasn't just losing fans, it was being wiped from mainstream consciousness. Fans were demanding ticket refunds.
Up 153. Just say 2.2 million average viewers, and then just say second most watched All-Star Game ever behind 2024, which is fine. You don't even have to say how down bad it is. It's a PR page.
Instead of trying to down Caitlin Clark and diminish her to the level that
social media was swamped with boycott announcements, and the uncomfortable fact became impossible to ignore. This league rises and falls on one individual. So how did ESPN respond to this crisis? With the most skilled sleight of hand in sports media history. They carefully selected their comparative data from 2023, the pre-Clark professional era, and purposely removed any reference of the 2024 benchmark numbers that would have revealed the reality. It was statistical surgery conducted with the accuracy of a master magician, aimed to distract from the fact that viewership had plummeted by over 1 million viewers year over year. ESPN plastered that misleading 158% increased statistic everywhere they could, knowing full well that it painted a completely false picture of the league's trajectory. They were depending on viewers not doing the math, not asking the hard questions, and not recognizing the convenient gaps in their data presentation. It was narrative manipulation at its finest, meant to safeguard their investment in women's basketball at the price of journalistic ethics. The league had spent months arguing that they were more than just one player, that their success was predicated on collective talent and rising fan participation.
Caitlin Clark was in it. We're going to say it's up on non-Caitlin Clark numbers because, you know, Caitlin Clark's just an anomaly. Caitlin Clark's not a player. Caitlin Clark is not relevant to this. Caitlin Clark is an anomaly.
y'all are trying to straddle the fence. We want your money, but we don't want you. Which one is it? Which one is it? We want the viewership, but we only want viewership from certain people's fans. We want the ratings up, but we don't want these type of fans.
When the All-Star Game failed to deliver, ESPN's tone flipped so dramatically it caused everyone whiplash. Suddenly, the same network that had been applauding Clark for record-breaking numbers was downplaying individual impact and focusing on long-term growth tales. Even the Friday Night Skills Challenge numbers tell a story of desperation. 1.3 million viewers tuned in, representing an 89% surge that ESPN celebrated like it was a championship triumph. But they conveniently failed to note that these numbers were driven by format modifications, primetime scheduling, and fan expectation that Clark would still make a surprise cameo. It had little to do with overall league interest, and everything to do with Clark's gravitational pull over the basketball world. The economic ripple effects went far beyond television ratings. Clark's absence prompted a thorough collapse across the WNBA's whole business model. Ticketing revenue plummeted, merchandise sales nosedived, and sponsorship valuations came under intense scrutiny. The league lost its center of gravity, and the market responded with brutal honesty. That 48% ticket price crash wasn't just a figure, it was a consumer rebellion.
These other people stated that, you know what? It was sold out. It was not a boycott. Well, you know the old saying, men lie, women lie, and the numbers don't. This is a case.
Social media exploded with cancellations and boycotts as fans made their preferences very clear. The WNBA wasn't simply losing numbers. It was losing momentum, legitimacy, and the mainstream attention that Clark had single-handedly provided. ESPN's number manipulation became an increasingly desperate attempt to minimize sponsor and advertiser concern, but the truth was becoming impossible to hide. The media criticism started coming in from unexpected places. Christine Brennan, one of the most renowned voices in sports journalism, took to social media with a viral call-out that struck straight to the heart of ESPN's deception. Her question was simple but devastating. Why are you marketing historic ratings?
I believe that it's everything also leading up to this. I mean, talk about leading up to this. The officiating, I think enough fans had it up to here with the league as a whole. People had it up to here. You got to understand. Caitlin Clark is getting beat up in these games. The refs aren't calling anything. Kathy Engelbert seems to have air between both of her ears. She seems to have pure air.
When the statistics are actually down drastically from the prior year, it was the kind of direct challenge that exposed the difference between journalistic optimism and outright misrepresentation. Austin Karp from the Sports Business Journal revealed the missing background that ESPN had purposely omitted, establishing a continuous pattern that created a clear picture. Whenever Clark was absent, viewership decreased dramatically. The case for the WNBA's absolute Clark reliance was becoming apparent, and ESPN's purposeful attempt to deceive the public was growing more desperate by the day. What makes ESPN's comparison strategy so revealing is that it inadvertently admits there are two distinct eras in WNBA history, pre-Clark and post-Clark. These aren't just different seasons, they represent completely different realities with different audience expectations, engagement levels, and commercial viability. By purposely using 2023 as their baseline, ESPN was recognizing that the present WNBA's visibility and financial power are tied to one player, a truth they sorely fear putting on the record for sponsors and investors. The hypocrisy reached ultimate insanity when you consider ESPN's narrative revisions during the season. For months, they had been crediting Clark for record-breaking growth, celebrating her impact on television ratings, ticket sales, and mainstream attention.
This whole situation is the WNBA referees not giving Caitlin Clark a fair whistle. The whistle played into facts when it comes to this WNBA All-Star game. I don't give a damn how people try to spin it, cut it. You cannot cut the facts, and the facts is the WNBA All-Star game was a disaster.
But the moment the All-Star game bombed without her, suddenly individuals didn't matter, and it was all about long-term growth trends. The inconsistency was so evident it invalidated their entire previous story. This isn't just about sports journalism ethics, it's about money, power, and the future of women's basketball. TV ratings are a key factor in salary negotiations, collective bargaining, and the overall financial health of the league. When ESPN manipulates these figures, they're not simply spinning a story. They're possibly destroying players' leverage in contract negotiations and portraying a misleading image of league stability that could affect millions of dollars in future deals. ESPN isn't just a broadcaster in this scenario. They're a stakeholder with significant financial interests in the WNBA's success. Their coverage impacts how sponsors invest, how salaries get distributed, and how the entire ecosystem of women's professional basketball runs. When journalism becomes corporate messaging disguised as news, everyone loses except the network.
I've been waiting on this, as have I. But the WNBA All-Star Game ratings have come out, and all I could think of right off the bat was 4 little letters. F-A-F-O. F-A-rank.
Its investment. The credibility damage extends well beyond WNBA coverage. ESPN is sacrificing its long-term image across their entire sports portfolio for short-term protection of one product. Social media erupted with charges of spin and narrative control, and viewers made it clear they weren't interested in phony interpretations of reality. Trust erosion creates a feedback loop of declining engagement, and ESPN might be inadvertently damaging the very property they're trying to protect. This deceit becomes even more troublesome when you consider the WNBA's global expansion goals under Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. International partners need to believe the numbers they're seeing, and international media executives are clever enough to read between the lines of faked data. ESPN statistical gymnastics are raising red flags for possible worldwide partnerships and posing risks for advertising revenue from corporations that might be acting on utterly false assumptions about league popularity. In the streaming era, where digital platforms track every click, every minute viewed, and every user exit, ESPN's traditional ratings manipulation.
What this league looks like without Caitlin Clark being involved in your biggest events. Cathy Engelbert, this should be a perfect example of why you need to get your officiating cleaned up, and you need to have a talk with your players in the league. And nobody's asking you to hold Caitlin Clark's hand.
Becomes even more transparent. Digital metrics can't be altered the same way traditional television ratings can. And streaming data certainly reveals even higher drop-offs while Clark is away. The pressure to push false narratives increases as the evidence of league dependency becomes impossible to hide. Here's what this all comes down to. ESPN's desperate attempt to recast the All-Star Game tale reflects their own doubt in the WNBA's future without Caitlin Clark. When the network with the most financial investment won't tell the truth about ratings dependency, it raises serious questions for sponsors, fans, and players about why anyone should buy into the hype. Real growth doesn't require deception, and Caitlin Clark certainly doesn't need ESPN to fake numbers to prove her impact. Her influence speaks for itself through actual fan interaction, legitimate market responses, and genuine cultural events that can't be fabricated by statistical manipulation. The stats don't lie, even when the networks do. If you believe Caitlin Clark is the true needle mover in women's basketball, leave that statement in the comments and be sure to subscribe, because this narrative is far from over.
You see, this is exactly what we were talking about. WNBA All-Star ratings are in for 2025, and it is down 40%. 40% from last year. That's bad. That is really bad. We already watched the ticket prices drop by more than 50% because Caitlin Clark was not playing. This is bad news for the WNBA, and